A lot of different ways to look at this. And the opinion that I've come to is that, at least over the short term, Dick Cheney has won. I think that this whole thing with the release or the non-release of the more torture photos, there's so many levels to this. It's like peeling an onion. But at its core, you ask the question, and Newsweek actually asked the question, we were talking about it yesterday and the day before, why is Dick Cheney so hysterical? Why is he running around like the Energizer Bunny, hitting every TV show possible? Why is he, doing the Magical Mystery Tour? And I am coming to the conclusion that one of the main reasons he's been doing this, not just, the classic notion that he was trying to pee in the jury pool, as lawyers like to say, maybe a little more colorfully, that he was trying to influence potential juries that he may be before. I don't think he thinks that he's going to be before a jury, although you never know. Lawrence Wilkerson says he's one of the most terrified men he's ever known. He's one of the most afraid little men that he has ever known. That's Lawrence Wilkerson's words. But what if, given the fact that, as the old Chinese proverb goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, pictures have thousands of times the impact of words. We remember things visually. I mean, this is a very, very powerful thing. There are sects within Christianity, Judaism, and Islam that don't allow photographs. Literally don't allow photographs. And a mentor of mine, a friend of mine, Gottfried Mueller, I wrote about this in a book called The Prophet's Way, believes, he's 95 now, believes that pictures are a violation of the first commandment, that they're graven images. And I remember 30 years ago saying to him, why? What's wrong with pictures? And he said, do you remember, he said, when you think of your father and your mother, what do you remember? And immediately I remembered a picture of my mom and dad that was taken 35 years ago, the two of them. It was a nice, it was a shot that I think my brothers and I all paid for, or something like that, for Christmas. And a photo that used to sit on, at that time, in our bedroom. And I said, that's the picture I remember. And he said, yeah. You don't remember them alive. You remember the photo. Because a photo is an amplification of reality. Because it's a moment in time that you can look at for an hour. And instead of looking at it for 1 second, you're looking at it for 100,000 seconds or 1,000,000 seconds. And it has so much power. Now, I'm not advocating, that photos are violations of the first, religiously violations of the first commandment. My point is that photos are incredibly powerful. An enormous amount of the back half of the brain, basically, the whole occipital region, is devoted to visual memory. We remember things visually. Back when I used to do training in education, I'd go into, I did a lot of consulting for school districts, and people would, I'd have teachers, or for that matter, entire, groups of teachers in school districts say, these kids, they all have ADHD, they're not capable of learning anything. And I would say, I can teach them to memorize the Bill of Rights in 15 minutes. And they go, that's impossible. These kids have never memorized the Bill of Rights. All 10 of the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. I say, yeah, I can teach them to memorize the Bill of Rights in 10, 15 minutes. And they say, prove it. And I go in front of a classroom of third graders or fifth. It doesn't matter. And say, now, in your mind, just imagine a giant church comes flying out of the sky and lands, boom, in the middle of your town. This giant church, wham, just lands right in the middle of the street. And debris is flying all over the place. And you run up to it and go, holy cow, look at that. It squashed a bunch of people and crushed some cars, and then the windows of the church fly open and there's a bunch of guns sticking out. And because the people in the church, they got all these guns, and so the governor says, we got to do something about this, and he starts parachuting the army in. And so there's these soldiers circling the church. And and it goes on from there. There's a whole story. But what I just told you is the First Amendment, separation of church and state. The Second Amendment, right to bear arms. The Third Amendment, you can't quarter soldiers. And you just go through this. There's even, I had at the time a part about the O.J. Simpson trial, and you just tell a story and you make it visual. If it's visual, people will remember it. And this is all meta to this you know, they're saying, well, if we release these photos, it's going to inflame the Muslim world. Well, it's true if we're going to release the photos and say, yeah, look what we did. But if we release the photos and say, this is a horror that was committed by a previous administration who we are going to hold accountable, then I would submit to you that not only will not put our troops in harm's way, it will enhance our troops' safety. Because people all over the world will get it that we are fighting for something or standing for something. There's really 2 or 3 levels to this argument. Let me just run through these very quickly. The first level of the argument, or some of the issues around this, the release of these photos. Barack Obama, well, here's Barack Obama's statement on the whole issue of the release of the photos, first of all, what he had to say yesterday.
Understand, these photos are associated with closed investigations of the alleged abuse of detainees in our ongoing war effort. And I want to emphasize that these photos that were requested in this case are not particularly sensational, especially when compared to the painful images that we remember from Abu Ghraib.
So these are not photos from Abu Ghraib, meaning this is larger than Lindy England. This is larger than Charles Grainer. This is more than just a few bad apples. And if that's true, if my conclusion from these few words and the implication of this is true, then releasing these photos will require prosecutions. Releasing these photos will have the same effect as 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, whenever it was, when Barack Obama made the decision to release the torture memos. And it ignited a firestorm of controversy and protest. And frankly, that's a good and healthy thing for a democracy.
But they do represent conduct that did not conform with the Army manual. That's precisely why they were investigated. And I might add, investigated long before I took office. And where appropriate, sanctions have been applied. In other words, this is not a situation in which the Pentagon has concealed or sought to justify inappropriate action. Rather, it has gone through the appropriate and regular processes, and the individuals who were involved have been identified and appropriate actions have been taken.
But what about the individuals who ordered them to do this? No word about that.
It's therefore my belief that the publication of these photos would not add any additional benefit to our understanding of what was carried out in the past by a small number of individuals.
A small number of individuals? Well, I suppose if you include George Bush, Dick Cheney, John Yoo, Don Rumsfeld, Alberto Gonzalez, well, it's starting to get a little larger. You know, how many people in the administration were involved in this? How many people in the chain of command were involved in this? You know, Janice Karpinski on this program 3 years ago was talking about how she was a scapegoat.
In fact, the most direct consequence of releasing them, I believe, would be to further inflame anti-American opinion and to put our troops in greater danger.
See, and this is where he has bought into the right-wing argument. So, number one, there's that argument. This is going to, if these things are released, they will require prosecutions, number one. Number two, they will, I'm wondering, is Obama being threatened by the CIA the same way the Democrats in Congress, or maybe he's being, the Democrats are pleading with him? Because you've got now 3 members of Congress, 3 Democratic members of Congress, Jay Rockefeller, Nancy Pelosi, and Russ Feingold, arguably, saying, it looks like the CIA is selectively releasing information to make Democrats look good in order to stop investigations of what they were doing. Is Obama being basically threatened or blackmailed by the CIA? Is he afraid that the right wing is going to use this as a club against him politically every time a troop dies in Afghanistan or Iraq? They will. They certainly will. Or is it that these photos include what Cy Hirsch said was in them 2 years ago when he said these were photos, including photos of children being tortured and raped? Remember John Yoo? Actually, I'm not going to do this over the bumper music. I'll tell you about John Yoo when we come back and what he said could be done to children. Stick around.